A recording studio in Sausalito, California, February 1976. 6 people inside are making an album that will sell 40 million copies. Outside, 2 of them haven't spoken in a week.
When the critics and the audiences agree that something's very good, it's got to be very good. So the group we're talking about is Fleetwood Mac, and they play the blues.
We're now going to do our latest single called Oh Well.
One is sleeping with a man she hasn't told her boyfriend about.
It's someone's hand to lead me through the night.
One walked out of a party in Munich 6 years ago and never came back the same. And one is about to be handed a song that will break her in front of everyone. Stevie Nicks. She was 26 years old and just about done with music. Stephanie Lynn Nicks, born in Phoenix and raised on her grandfather's country songs, was working as a waitress in Los Angeles and cleaning houses on weekends to pay her rent. Her boyfriend, Lindsey Buckingham, had a record deal that wasn't going anywhere, and Stevie had made the call. She was going back to school. Music was over. Then, on New Year's Eve 1974, a phone rang. A British drummer named Mick Fleetwood was hunting for a new guitarist, and he'd heard Lindsey play on a track called Frozen Love. Lindsey told him, "I'll do it, but only if Stevie comes too. We're a package." That was all it took. One phone call, and the waitress who was about to walk away from music became one half of the most famous couple in rock and roll. Within 10 months, she'd written Rhiannon, the song about a Welsh witch that she would go on to perform every single night for the next 50 years, often spinning across the stage with her arms outstretched while the audience screamed back at her. Then came Landslide, which she wrote alone in Aspen, Colorado, sitting on the floor with a guitar and staring at a snow-covered mountain.
I mean, I remain in those days. Sometimes I'd probably live in the past a little bit too much.
She was 27 years old, and somehow she already knew the song would outlive her. And then there was Dreams. She wrote it in about 10 minutes on a waterbed in the studio, and she recorded the vocal in one single take while Lindsey, her ex-boyfriend by then, sat 6 feet behind the glass producing it. It is the only Fleetwood Mac single that has ever hit #1 in America. Then came Silver Springs, her unanswered letter to Lindsey, the song the band literally cut from Rumors because there wasn't enough room on the vinyl, and she has never forgiven them for it. She performed it live for the next 40 years and stared directly at Lindsey every single time she sang it.
Well, I have a platform. I tell a good story. So maybe I should try to do something.
Outside the band, her solo career exploded with Belladonna in 1981, and songs like Edge of 17 and Stop Dragging My Heart Around with Tom Petty turned her into a stadium-level solo act on top of everything else. In the middle of all of it, she was sleeping with another man in the band, and I'll get to who in a few minutes. Then came the cocaine that nearly killed her at 38, and after that, the Klonopin years, 8 of them that erased most of her memory. She's 77 now and still on tour, still in the shawls, still singing songs about a man who broke her heart in 1976. Lindsey Buckingham. He was 25 when the call came, a fingerstyle guitar player from Palo Alto, California, who'd been playing since he was 7 years old, and not the way most rock guitarists played either. Lindsey played classical, with all 5 fingers on the strings at once and no pick at all, in the kind of intricate, technical style that almost nobody else in 1970s rock could pull off. He had one condition when Mick offered him the gig, and that was that Stevie had to come with him. Mick said fine. Then, everything fell apart. The Rumors sessions are legendary, and not in a good way. There were screaming arguments in the studio, and there were songs written specifically to wound each other. Lindsey wrote Go Your Own Way about Stevie, and the line in the song that says shacking up is all you want to do was him publicly accusing her of sleeping around.
Estranged, we're not living together, we'd, for all intents and purposes, broken up.
She begged him to take it out, but he refused, and she ended up singing harmony on it on stage every night for the next 2 years. And on top of that, he was the one who produced Dreams, the song she'd written about him. If you go back and listen to Rumors with that in your head, you can hear it. He's the producer, he arranged her vocal, he chose the guitar tones, and the whole album is essentially the 2 of them fighting each other through the mixing board. Then there's The Chain, the only song on the record credited to all 5 members. That famous bass line at the end, the one in every NFL highlight reel you've ever seen, was actually Lindsey's arrangement because he cut it together out of pieces of takes that hadn't worked. work. After Rumors sold 40 million copies, he did the unthinkable and refused to make another one, forcing the band into an experimental double album called Tusk that cost $1 million in 1979 money. The title track is built around tribal-sounding drums and a USC marching band, and Warner Brothers genuinely thought he had lost his mind. He has said it's the work he's proudest of in his entire life. He also recorded a string of solo records that almost nobody talks about anymore. Out of the Cradle, Under the Skin, Gift of Screws. Quiet, finger-picked, brilliant little albums made in his home studio while the band was on hiatus.
You know, tend to pare down everything as much as possible. I don't talk to my family in Northern California that much.
Then in 2018, after a backstage argument, Stevie went to Mick and said, him or me. Mick chose her, and Lindsey got fired over the phone by management. A few months later, emergency open heart surgery damaged his vocal cords, and the man whose harmonies had defined Fleetwood Mac for 40 years couldn't reliably sing them anymore. He's 76 now and still waiting on a reunion that may never come. The woman who held them all together, she's not with us anymore. Christine McVie. Christine Ann Perfect, born in Lancashire, England in 1943. Daughter of a violin professor and a psychic medium. And I'm not even making that up. That is genuinely the family she came from. Which, when you think about it, is exactly the family you'd need to produce a woman who could write the happiest pop songs of an entire decade while her own marriage was falling apart on the same album. She joined Fleetwood Mac in 1970, already married to John McVie, the bassist, and when the band needed a permanent keyboard player, she slid into the chair like she'd always been there.
We went on, performed it live at the inaugural ball.
Now, about the songs. She wrote Songbird alone in an empty concert hall at 3 in the morning, with one microphone and one piano, playing through tears while the engineers sat in the booth and couldn't speak afterward. She wrote Don't Stop about her divorce from John, and somehow turned it into the most optimistic song in the entire Fleetwood Mac catalog. Bill Clinton used it for his 1992 presidential campaign, and the band reunited and played it live at his inauguration. She wrote You Make Loving Fun about her affair with the band's lighting director, a man named Curry Grant. And when John asked her what the song was about, she told him it was about her dog. He believed her, and he played bass on the track for the next 45 years. His ex-wife's love song, About Another Man, bass intro by John. 45 years.
Well, we were rehearsing to go on the tour, so we were all in the same city. So.
Then there's Everywhere, written about the relief of falling in love with somebody new after the divorce. And Little Lies, written about the second marriage that was already in trouble. There's Say You Love Me, Over My Head, Hold Me, Think About Me, the songs that still play on the radio every single day, somewhere in the world, 40 years after she wrote them. The ones your wife walked down the aisle to, the ones that sound like a California afternoon. All Christine. In 1998, she developed a fear of flying so severe that she retired, moved back to England, bought a Tudor manor in Kent, and didn't play with Fleetwood Mac for 16 years. She restored the manor by hand, room by room, and barely picked up an instrument the entire time. Then, in 2014, she just walked back in, toured the world again, and wrote new music with Lindsey for an album called Buckingham McVie in 2017. She died on November 30th, 2022 at 80 years old of a stroke and a metastatic cancer the family had never disclosed publicly. Stevie wrote a letter saying she had lost her best friend, her sister, the only woman in the world who truly understood what it was like to be a woman inside Fleetwood Mac. And that secret affair I mentioned in Stevie's segment, it's time to tell you who. Mick Fleetwood. It was Mick. Of course it was Mick. Michael John Kells Fleetwood, born in Cornwall, England in 1947, co-founded Fleetwood Mac in 1967 when he was 20 years old. He's the 7-foot drummer with the wooden balls hanging from his belt on stage. And those balls, by the way, were christening balls from an old London pub originally, and he kept them for 50 years because he liked the sound they made when he danced.
It will never be like that. It's become another animal.
His drumming is on every Fleetwood Mac album ever recorded. The kick drum pulse on The Chain, the loose tribal pattern on Tusk, the slow groove on Dream, thunderous fills on Go Your Own Way. That unmistakable low end you hear underneath every Fleetwood Mac song is Mick and John locked in together, and they have been for 59 years. And from 1977 to 1979, while the band was at its absolute peak, Mick was the man Stevie was sleeping with. Both of them were married to other people at the time, and they kept the affair from Lindsey and from Christine and from John and from absolutely absolutely everyone for 2 solid years. Mick has said in interviews that it remains the most painful chapter of his life, not because of the affair itself, but because of what it cost him. His marriage to Jenny Boyd ended over it, and his friendship with Stevie was never quite the same again afterward.
People often think, oh yeah, how often are you on?
He was also, for 50 years, the band's mediator. The one who absorbed every fight and took the 3 a.m. phone calls when Stevie was breaking down. The one who watched Lindsey walk out, then let him walk back in, and then, in 2018, allowed management to fire him. Mick has said firing Lindsey is the worst thing he's ever done. And the strange part is that he didn't actually do it himself. He just let it happen. Outside the band, he's lived 3 lifetimes. He's been married 4 times, twice to Jenny Boyd, whose sister Patty was married first to George Harrison and then later to Eric Clapton. Which means for a few strange years, Mick Fleetwood was effectively the brother-in-law of 2 of the most famous rock stars on earth. He has 4 daughters, including twins born in 2002, and he married again in 2026. Even with Fleetwood Mac selling 120 million records, Mick has filed for bankruptcy more than once. There were bad investments, a cocaine habit through the 70s that quietly drained millions, and a chain of Hawaiian restaurants that were destroyed by wildfires. His net worth now sits somewhere around 30 to 40 million, which is modest by his bandmates' standards. He's 78 years old and still drumming. And the man who's been standing behind him for 58 years has the quietest story of any of them. John McVie. John Graham McVie, born in West London in 1945. Bassist. The Mac in Fleetwood Mac. He is the quietest man in rock and roll. He's played bass on every Fleetwood Mac album ever recorded, and he's been there for every lineup change, every firing, every reunion, and every funeral. In 59 years, he has given almost no real interviews, and the people who know him say he plays bass, drinks coffee, and goes home, and that is roughly the entire picture. Now, about the bass. That famous slow descending 4-note line at the end of the chain, the one in every NFL Sunday broadcast and every dramatic movie trailer for the last 40 years, that is John. It's one of the most recognized bass lines in all of rock music, and he plays it the exact same way every single time. And he has played it on stage hundreds of times, and he has never sat down and given a single interview about it. His playing is all over Rumors. There's the walking groove that drives the chain, the melodic counterline on Dreams, the relentless pulse underneath Go Your Own Way. If you ever go back and listen to Rumors with headphones on, paying attention only to the bass, you'll hear his whole career philosophy in there. Serve the song, then disappear. Before any of that though, he was the bassist in John Mayall's Blues Breakers, one of the most legendary British blues bands of the 1960s, alongside Eric Clapton and a young Peter Green. And that's where Peter found him in the first place. He was the original Mac in Fleetwood Mac, before there was even a band built around him. He was married to Christine for 8 years, and he didn't know about her affair with Curry Grant until it was basically the rest of the band's worst-kept secret. He found out the way you'd hate to find out, which is slowly, through hints, through other people knowing before he did, and eventually through the songs themselves. He never publicly criticized her, not once, and after the divorce, he just stayed in the band. He played bass on You Make Lovin' Fun, the song she'd written about leaving him for another man, every night for the next 45 years. He had his own collapses too. There was an alcohol-induced seizure on stage in 1987 that scared him into sobriety, and a colon cancer diagnosis in 2013 that was caught early and successfully treated. His second wife, Julianne, died in 2024 after 46 years of marriage, and they had 1 daughter together, born in 1989. He lives a quiet life now in Hawaii, sailing the boat that has become his second great love after the bass guitar. He's 80 years old with a net worth around $50 million. But the man who started the whole band, the original genius, is the saddest story of all. Peter Green. Peter Allen Greenbaum, born in the East End of London in 1946. Jewish working-class kid who picked up a guitar at 15, and by the time he was 20, he was being talked about as one of the greatest blues guitarists alive. B.B. King himself once said that Peter Green was the only white guitarist who had ever made him sweat. He founded Fleetwood Mac in 1967, and he named the band after the rhythm section, after Mick and John, because he thought they were the best players he had ever heard. The band isn't named after its founder. It is named after the 2 guys he wanted standing behind him on stage. Now, about the music. The music that almost nobody under 50 realizes is actually his. He wrote Albatross, the 1968 instrumental that went to #1 in the UK, 3 minutes of slow, oceanic twinning guitar. And John Lennon himself later admitted that Sun King on the Beatles' Abbey Road album was a deliberate copy of Albatross. That's not a guess. Lennon said it in print. He wrote Oh Well with that descending acoustic riff that every guitar kid tries to learn at 15 and never quite gets right. He wrote Man of the World, a devastating ballad from 1969 about being famous and miserable. And the central line in it is, I just wish that I had never been born. He was 22 years old when he wrote that. He also wrote The Green Manalishi, a snarling, paranoid song he said came to him in a dream. And in interviews afterward, he claimed the dream was about money trying to possess him, which was the first real public sign that something inside him was breaking. And he wrote Black Magic Woman. Yes, that Black Magic Woman, the Santana song, the one you've heard 1,000 times on classic rock radio. Peter Green wrote it in 1968, and Santana made it a worldwide hit 2 years later. Then in 1970, he went to a party in Munich where somebody gave him LSD, by every account an enormous amount of it, and something happened inside that house that night that never unwound. He started telling the band he wanted to give all his money away, and when they thought he was joking, he proved he wasn't, because he walked away from Fleetwood Mac at the peak of their early success and refused to accept millions of dollars in royalties. What followed was the slowest collapse in rock and roll. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, spent years in psychiatric hospitals, received electroconvulsive therapy, and grew his fingernails so long he physically couldn't play the guitar anymore. In 1977, he was arrested for threatening his accountant with a shotgun because the accountant wouldn't stop trying to send him royalty checks. He died in his sleep on July 25, 2020 at 73 years old of natural causes. The gentlest possible exit for a man whose life had been anything but. 6 members and 59 years, 2 of them gone. Peter in 2020, Christine in 2022.